It's 6:30 p.m. and it's Monday, July the 11th. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and this is the meeting of the Committee of the Whole for the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal Administration and Finance Committee. And with the call to order, the next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. And I'll be looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Councillor Cameron moving. Does he have a seconder? Councillor Hunter seconding. Discussion, if anything to add? Nothing. Those in favor? Motion is carried. And item number 3 on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest. And if there is a pecuniary interest, the general nature thereof. Does anyone have an interest to declare this evening? No disclosures declared, and so the minutes will also reflect. And so now we're at the business arising from the previous Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. And that was the meeting that took place on Monday, June the 20th, which was a combined committee meeting for administration, finance, public works, environmental services and facilities. So those minutes were circulated with this package. Does anybody have any business arising from those minutes? Questions? Okay, so I see no business arising. I'm moving on to item number 5, which is delegations and presentations, and we have none this evening. So that gets me to item number 6, which is number of discussion items. We have 3. The first discussion item concerns a letter that we've received from an Abby McIntyre concerning Youth Citizen of the Year. And the letter was circulated in one of our agenda correspondence packages, and it's been included in the package for tonight for discussion. And the basic topic is she's asking us, and she says in her letter, I propose 2 new categories to be considered for the 2022 awards. And those are, she's calling for nominations for Junior Citizen of the Year, elementary school age children ages 6 to 11, and secondary school aged youths 12 to 17. So I've discussed this a little bit with staff, but we need to get council discussion on this item. So the floor is open for discussion here to provide direction to staff. Councillor Cameron.
Yes, yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I read this with interest, and I find this an excellent suggestion. Over the COVID period, we've heard that our youth have suffered in ways that they wouldn't normally suffer by being away from school, away from friends, and so on. I think this is just an excellent 2 categories to be added in, and I know there's some details that would have to be worked out with Ms. McIntyre, yes, McIntyre and staff, and I feel we should go ahead with it.
Other discussion, Councillor Hunter.
Well, I take complete opposite view of it. I think these are school age kids and elementary schools. The school board has a very active recognition policy for kids in their schools. There's all kinds of awards they give. Student of the month, student of the year, and one thing or another, and participation awards. High school does the same. Every group, the Optimist Club recognizes the youth. The Shrine Club has a very active youth recognition program for ones who raise funds and did stuff during the year. I think this, for kids at that age, I think it's just creates a lot of dissension among the kids at school, picking one kid out of the child out of the group that did a little bit of fundraising or something. And the biggest majority of these children that are being promoted on Facebook and stuff for the things they're doing, it's 80% of parents pushing behind them, that's putting all these signs up and stuff of what they're doing and one thing or another. I think youth, that needs to be left to the school boards to recognize, and the service clubs that deal with children all the time recognizes them all the time. I don't think it's a place for politicians to get involved in recognition of them, so I'd vote against it. So.
Okay, other comments, Deputy Mayor?
Sure. Reading through it, the younger category, I'm probably not an enormous fan of, but the older age group, I think it was 13 to 17 or well, so 12 to 17, something like that. Absolutely. The more, the more that we can support those that get recognized for outside of things that they do outside of school that they do to make their communities better. I think it's fantastic.
Councillor Deschamps, Dillabaugh, did you want to weigh in?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I have to agree with Councilor Cameron. I think it's a great idea. I mean, I know, and Councilor Hunter had a very, good points. I mean, organizations like me, for the Knights of Columbus, we have a bursary where we give money to the high school children, but still, I think as a group here, that's our whole idea, is having our youth stay around, grow up, go to high school, go to university, and come back, get a job and live in our community. So no, I think it's I don't know if we can do it in 2022, that's all. I mean, is it possible? I'm just going back from duty chair to the staff. Is it possible we can do it for this year, 2022?
So,
But I am in fully. I think it's a great idea.
okay, so I'm going to let the staff speak in a minute, but just in our earlier discussions with staff, because I wanted to run this idea by them first to see whether it would be technically possible. But one of the things I will point out is that, we've run this the Citizen of the Year for quite a number of years now, and it's always, we only ever get 1 or 2 nominations at the best of times. And so one of the staff concerns is that whole process of nominations, and how will we end up getting a response? The other thing is that I just wanted to bring this out, in the last paragraph of Miss McIntyre's letter, she said, "I would be pleased to lend a hand to further develop and implement this initiative. If you have any questions, I would be happy to present to council or discuss with your staff. Otherwise, you may respond to me via phone." She gives the phone number. Well, I just want council to know that I've tried her 5 times and I haven't been able, I've left my number each and every time, but I haven't had a response yet. And the last contact that I made was this afternoon, because I wanted to know what was going to be discussed tonight. But I'm going to now refer your question to the staff, and I guess the gist of Councillor Dillabaugh's question is, technically and administratively, could we handle one of these categories? And I'll tell you, as a chair, I'm kind of leaning towards the secondary school age kids, because I quite agree with Councillor Hunter that the school boards already have a lot of these kinds of recognition programs in place. But if we picked one of these categories, let's say the secondary school age youth, would staff be able to deal with it in this term? And I'll go through the CAO to the clerk. I think the clerk does most of the work on this.
So through the chair, I wouldn't see an issue with trying to manage another age bracket for the Citizen of the Year this year. We usually organize them towards the end of the year, November, December. This year will be a little slight change with the change of council. So it move up potentially a month at the most. For my approach, this one would probably be reach out, do social media, advertise on our website, through local newspapers like we would normally do, and incorporate the various schools in our area that have local students in them.
Now, the thing is, can you just sort of refresh our memory? And I realize that this year will be different because the request for nominations will go out during our term of council, but the result will be dealt with by the new council, because it will be after November the 15th, I suspect.
So through the chair, in previous terms, we've moved up the deadline dates. So that way the current term of council is the ones recognizing and awarding the Citizen of the Years. So that way it's not a brand new term coming in where they're not familiar with the organization of the citizens. So that wouldn't be a concern.
Okay, but you're suggesting that this year you would postpone it until December.
No, no, not at all through the
Give it
chair.
up.
No, we move it up.
Oh, move it, in other words, closer to, oh, I see. Okay, that's what your suggestion is.
Right.
So if that was the case, then, and the award was going to be presented, that would have to be prior to the end of November. And when you come right down to it, the last council meeting prior to the end of November would be in October.
Through the chair, that is correct. However, we can always organize it before a committee or special council meeting at the beginning of November as well. We have some wiggle room there.
Okay,
I would suggest towards the end of October, or the beginning of November, to hold that.
okay, so with that timeline in mind, when would you start your request for nominations?
Typically, we would start the request end of October, start of November. I would probably start that at the end of September in this case.
Okay, so you have a relatively short nomination period then, 30 days, 40 days.
Through the chair, usually a 30-day turnaround, but again, we advertise through multiple social media avenues, 2 local newspapers, our website, word of mouth in a lot of cases through my office and through the general front office. We keep all of the nomination forms available at the front desk in case anyone just mentioned something in passing. But for this one, there'd be a little bit more organization involved if we were to incorporate this to try and get it out to the schools and hopefully broadcast it a little bit more through social media to get some more people involved.
Okay, so that sort of deals with Councillor Dillaba's question. Now, the technicality of it is, or the political side of it is, or the administrative side of it is, do we want to expand the Citizen of the Year program? So everybody's spoken once to it. Is there any second speaks? The reason I say that is because I sort of have a split here. Councillor Cameron.
Yes, thank you. I would like to see both categories included. Mr. Mayor, I don't think by issuing commendations, especially from the township to 2 people, I don't think there's a young age that you should start. I think it should be started as soon as possible, which would leave these primary students, I'll use that word, into as they approach the high school level, they're tuned into to these things, and I totally agree with Councillor Hunter that yes, the school boards do a great job of honoring. However, there are some areas where they don't do. And I just like to point out another thing. If you're an athlete, you're an athlete, you get all the accolades there. There are some people that are more academic than athletic, and sometimes they're overlooked. I just feel that both categories should be included just to prepare our after all, these are our upcoming citizens, and the more preparation we can do for them, I think the better.
Councillor Cameron, second speak. Anybody else for second speak? Councillor Dillaba.
I just, I'm along with Council Cameron. I agree. I think we should have both categories if we're going to do it. I'd just like to know if we could get the schools or the teachers that working with these children 6 to 11 and 12 to 17, if we could get them involved in the process of doing this, you know, where they work with the children every day and so on and so forth. So we don't make it a political where someone will get on Facebook and they do something. The teachers work with these people every day. So I wonder if we could get them involved if possible on this too.
Well, I think our present process is that anybody can nominate a citizen, right? So where the nomination comes from would be the same kind of thing. Now, I know that the nominees have to be citizens of the township.
Through the chair, we haven't made that obligation, actually.
Well,
But for
that's the
most-
award though, Citizen of the Year.
The citizen being awarded has to be a resident of the township, but the person nominating doesn't necessarily have to be a resident of the township, because some of them are within organizations that cover multiple jurisdictions. But they have to be aware that it's only nominating residents of our township, as well as our current Citizen of the Year covers all age brackets. There isn't a limitation as of right at this point.
Second term, Councillor Hunter.
Well, I still don't think it's a good idea to get them involved. We want to do any of them, the secondary one, I can maybe go along with that, but the 6 to 11-year-old, these children don't even realize what this is. Anybody that's been involved in the school system knows that the elementary level, most of the ones that anything outside the school that's getting involved. But the thing is, most of the kids are the parents' council, kids that are getting accolades and getting pushed forward for. So you get to high school, there's no more parents' council. That's an open thing, and that's the teachers. As Councilor Dillbaugh suggested, that's the teachers that would like to get involved. Same as the awards that are given out now. There's all kinds of awards, and they're not just for sports, and they're not just for being at the top marks. I know that because my granddaughter just received one from high school, and it was a combination of everything, because she served in the school council, and represented them in different things and stuff. And if we're going to do it, I think it needs to be done with the high school level, not the small kids. It's more of an accolade for the parents than it is for the children at that age.
Second shot, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, sticking with certainly option number 2, the secondary school option, and it, to sort of echo, Councillor Dillbaugh and Councillor Hunter, both recognizing that schools do recognize this, and for me, this is a separate recognition that would recognize, community involvement and volunteerism outside of school. What they do, how they become citizens or youth citizens of the year isn't really a school project to me. It's something outside of school. So for those reasons, number 2, and hopefully it's next.
Okay, so we have a split here, and I'm not gonna call this to a vote. What I am gonna do is see if we can arrive at a consensus here. Ms. McIntyre indicates an interest to become involved. And so I think what I'm gonna do is, let's assume that we can get some further involvement from Ms. McIntyre, helping us perhaps to develop some criteria. Working with staff to develop some criteria. With that basic assumption, could we arrive at consensus? And because this is a sort of a first year that we've extended the program beyond Citizen of the Year open, could we arrive at a consensus that we'll just add one category, which would be secondary school age youth? You've all heard each other speak. I don't want to call it to a vote, but I'm just asking, can we arrive at that consensus and take it to the next level and bring back a set of criteria?
Yeah, Mike.
Did everybody consensus?
Sure,
Okay.
yeah. However, I do, just the follow-up, I do like the clerk's remark that there is only one category, and it's all ages.
That's, oh yeah,
That's
I
for
mean
the
for
citizen.
Citizen of the Year.
That's
Yeah.
for the citizen.
Yeah,
But
but-
yes, if we get 1 or 2, Mr. Mayor, I'm quite happy.
Okay, so we'll see where this goes and we'll pursue it a little bit further. Okay, I'm gonna move on. I think we have consensus around that. Okay, so I'm gonna move on now to 6B, which was brought up at a previous meeting. And we've been asked in a number of forums to make a nomination for the Bill Thait Economic Development Leadership Award, which is presented by the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville at the Economic Development Summit, which is held in November. So there is a sort of a lead into that on page 10 of 75, bottom of the page. You've all seen it. And so I don't know that we're in a position to actually nominate anybody, but I think what would generally happen and what seems to happen is that with other nominees that I've been familiar with since I attend the Economic Development Summit every year, the nomination seems to come from the community, and sometimes the municipality will sort of endorse the nomination, but somebody has to write the reason and the rationale for the nomination, and that writing has to stand up to the scrutiny of the selection committee. So I'm not sure that we as a council would want to be the ones doing that, but are we agreed, or can we arrive at a consensus that if a nominee comes forward from our township, that we would endorse it? I'd like to hear some discussion. Councilor Hunter.
Well, I don't think we've ever had anybody nominated for the Bill Fay Award in the township. These nominations are kind of like our citizen award. People don't pay much attention to. I don't know if we polled everybody in the township. I don't know how many in the township even know what the Bill Fay Award is, other than the ones that served on council. I think council should nominate somebody, and I think we have a very apt entrepreneur right here in the village, Joe Bolton. He started up 4 or 5 different businesses from scratch and been making a go of them. So I think we should be.
Okay, so I think for the purpose of this discussion, we should kind of shy away from names, because most of these nominees don't know that they're nominated until after the first, second, and third are announced by the selection committee. Most don't know that they're nominated. So I think we should have some regard to confidentiality here. So let's just discuss this in terms of whether the council would be the one making the nomination, or whether we would just be actively promoting somebody in the township to make a nomination. I mean, let's try to deal with it on a slightly higher level. So if we can, without using any names, if we can carry on the discussion, because we don't want to embarrass anybody, and we don't want to
Let the cat out of the bag.
well, it's not just that, but this gets in the press, and then people start wondering, well, why were they talking about him, not talking about me? And first thing you know, you end up in a bad spot. So are there any other comments here? I mean, I think we can actively promote this award without actually getting directly. Well,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I concur with Councilor Hunter. I think the municipality should be making a put forward, shall we say, somewhere. We have some big industrial businesses as well as smaller businesses, and I think the township would find one or two.
Okay, any further comment?
Whether they're selected or not is a different story, but at least I think we should be putting a nomination forward.
Okay, because if we are going to go down that road, then that'll have to be discussed in camp. Any other comments here? Councilor.
I just think regardless of how we go or who we do along the way, I think council's got to take a active role, because we went for years and never had a nomination put forward from the township. So
Well, I was wondering if we didn't have one nominee a few years ago. I can think in the back of my mind that we did have one.
I didn't recall.
I don't want to mention names
No.
because
But
I may be wrong, but I think we had one that got to the top 3.
I think we need to really promote it among the people, let people know anyway about what the criteria is for it, or do more public on our webpage or social media to everybody. Available on Mary Dr. on social media or herself, or more on social media, what the criteria is. Township would really like to see somebody come, the business be nominated for it or something.
Wouldn't hurt.
It's actually a volunteer.
Sorry, go ahead.
It is a volunteer.
It's a
award,
volunteer award.
Right?
It's not
They'll
business.
take award
Yeah.
for standing. So, I mean, for me, yes, we can promote it. But I think we should get as much information from economic development officer too, maybe Ann Weir can give us.
No, they stay out of it,
No,
except for promoting it. They're not even part of the selection committee.
just to say what is this award about, the Bill Think Award, and what it, and why it was started back in 2011. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is to give it to us for information so we can pass that on.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
No, I don't want, I know
The
they're
wor-
not.
the wording, the wording is really, if I may, the wording is really simple. It's just that this annual award, also called the Warden's Award, recognizes and celebrates a volunteer who has shown outstanding commitment and leadership in the growth and vitality of the Leeds Grenville economy.
It's pretty simple.
Very simple.
Okay, so I think what we do know is that we should get behind this award and give it a push from the point of view of what the award is all about. On a secondary level, if there are individual members of council who feel that we should be, as a council, nominating somebody, then I think what we should do is refer that to the clerk and have that put on the agenda for an in-camera meeting under, there is a section of the Municipal Act which deals with personalities, so we can discuss it in that light. So I think we have consensus there. So I'm going to move on to item number 6C, which is the International Plowing Match participation. And again, that is also outlined on page 10 of 75. And so just to bring some new information to the table, Mr. Daly has informed me that the Port of Johnstown has purchased or reserved a 10 by 10 space. Now, all he knows at this point is that it's a 10 by 10 space, which is in a tent. Now, it is not part of the United Counties showcase. It's a separate standalone, I'm going to call it a booth. What Mr. Daly is indicating is that, and he's already told us in several, at least 2 different occasions, it's right in the center of his soybean harvest. So he's not going to have people available to man the booth. But what he would like to do is he would like to put up some of his port banners, and he would like to put up a continuous loop video about the port. If the township was interested in joining, he suggests that the township also purchase a 10 by 10 immediately adjacent, request it be immediately adjacent, and then we form a joint effort. So I just need some comment on that to provide direction to staff. Because at this point, and I'll just ask the CAO, has the township taken any individual initiatives here at this point?
Through the chair, we have not taken any individual initiatives. We've been working as part of the county showcase.
Yes. Okay. And I think as I see the last minutes of meetings, the county showcase is going to feature around or revolve around a touch a truck event. And we're going to contribute, I think, the Zamboni to the touch a truck event. Is that pretty much where our involvement lies at this point?
Through the chair, that's part of it. And then we would have brochures and some other items within that showcase, and potentially with respect to, instead of having a staff member dedicated for the entire duration, it could be sort of done in shifts where municipalities can have a representative there covering several municipalities. at one time.
Okay. All right, so discussion. Floor is open. Councillor Hunter.
Our park manager had a good suggestion that we put two booths, get a booth and put it side by side and work together on it. You know, it stands to reason we put some banners up beside of the township and stuff. We own the port. And if nothing else, it gets out the public conjunction between the two things. There's still lots of people who don't understand that the township owns the port. So in a wider area, maybe our own residents understand. South Dundas, North Dundas, go down South Beach, and I'll give an example of two or three of the directors on there when I first went on, didn't understand we own the port. We're talking about different policies and stuff, and I said something about some of the policies we had at the port. I said, how would you know anything about them? We own it, so I think this is a good idea that we get, everybody's going to attend.
So try to get a joint booth.
Get a joint group, plus then when we volunteered to help cover the port, we're doing both. We got the board of management there, and we got the councilors there, the mayor, deputy mayor, whoever is
Just right next door.
there, and we're right together. You don't have to run around, so.
Okay, so I think we have consensus on that, and that's basically all we're looking for. So will the staff take that as sort of a direction to see if you can negotiate a 10 by 10 space immediately adjacent to the port space?
Through the chair, we can certainly look into that. That certainly wasn't part of the 2022 budget at the time. We were looking to be in partnership with the county, but we can certainly look into that.
And I think that has thrown a wrench into all of us, and we haven't heard the last of this yet. So, but we get our foot in the door here. And by the way, I think we should recognize that not nomination, sorry, using the wrong word here. I think we should recognize that the applications for space there was a sort of an early bird rate, which expired, I think it was on towards the end of June, was extended a bit. And Mr. Daly got in just within the extension period. And so, you know, we didn't get into the showcase the way we had hoped, but I think it's Councillor Hunter says we can't let the thing go by totally without having some involvement. So this is one of the areas where we may overspend a line item in our budget. But I think the over expenditure will be minor. Okay, so I'm moving on. Item number 7 on the agenda. And the first item concerns Councillor Cameron has a motion for a Cardinal dog park.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I discussed this earlier that I would be bringing forward a motion, and I do have a motion signed by myself and seconded by Deputy Mayor Deschamps. And it reads, whereas the residents have experienced an interest and there is an apparent need of a large and small dog park fenced area for the off-leash controlled exercise of dogs in the village of Cardinal. And whereas the unused grassed over area, also known as the second unused ball diamond between the existing tennis courts and the ball diamond nearest the fire hall, is well suited for the location of a dog park, as some fencing is already in place and the area is large enough to exercise both large and small dogs in separate enclosures if deemed necessary. And whereas the proper signage in place, all dogs control and cleanup will remain the responsibility of the dog owner. And whereas it is proposed that the cost to construct the necessary fencing and signage, as well as some future repairs, could be paid from the Rideau St. Lawrence Hydro Fund, which would eliminate any initial cost to the taxpayer. And whereas access to water infrastructure is nearby if needed, And therefore be it resolved that council hereby directs staff to prepare plans for a modest small dog and large dog off-leash dog park of similar size and layout to the one in Morrisburg, Ontario. And to bring back to committee no later than September. Administration and Finance Committee meeting, a full report on the construction and costs. So you have your motion, Mr. Mayor, mover and secretary.
Your proposal.
Yes.
Okay, discussion, if any?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
In this, so just so that we're clear on it, we're basically just, we're just authorizing our staff to create a layout for a dog park on the old second ball diamond. And it'll come back with obviously the costs, connections for water, increased parking areas, or do we have to give direction for exactly what we want that study to come back as? That's my questions, because I think incorporated in this, looking at an entire ball diamond, it's not, the whole thing's not going to be needed. It's obvious that we need increased parking in that area. And, one of the things I'm hopeful for in seeing this is that, we'll come back with a combination of, okay, we've got room for a dog park, but we've also got, room for an additional 20, 30, 40 spaces as well for arena use, dog park use, basketball, tennis court, future use. Or I guess we have a swimming pool there too, for swimming pool use.
Just to answer that briefly, yes, that would certainly be fine. I would expect staff to come back with something like that at their let's say investigation into the size of dog parks. There's also a dog park in Johnstown, there's one in Morrisburg, one in Brockville. They're all over. So I would expect some due diligence when the report comes back. Now, I'd just like to bring up one comment you mentioned, and that's about water. Some of the dog parks do not have water, and there's a reason for that. A lot of the patrons that use dog parks will bring their own water because they do not trust or either the water or the implements such as a dish or something like this to drink out of, because it can spread viruses. Parvovirus is one of them. So whether there's a water hookup there, the only reason that was in the motion is that the infrastructure is certainly there.
Nearby.
Now, also too, there's another idea here for that. I don't know whether the arena, I don't think they do. I've looked, I don't see it, either the arena or the swimming pool, if they had an outside tap and a water bottle could be filled right from there. So that's for staff, just sort of, it's not mandatory to, as far as I'm concerned, to have water.
No, we already decided that in Johnstown, but we weren't gonna go the expense of
Okay.
extending the water from the building to the
Yeah.
park because there's an outside tap available.
Yeah.
Thank you. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I had one that I forgot as well, and I know it's suggested that the use for all of this is the hydro funds, and the question that I had written down is what the balance of that hydro fund counts would be.
I believe it's approximately 160,000. It's in our report here tonight.
Lots of
It's
there,
in-
lots of
so-
there.
So, yes.
Perfect. Oh, yeah, it would be in that.
Yeah. it's in the report.
Further discussion?
So if I could, through the chair, there's $160,221.45.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilor Dilba?
Yes, I'm all for a dog park. I think it's great, but I sure don't like it where it's going. We're suffering for parking spaces up there, so my suggestion is look for another spot for dog park. We need parking. We need parking bad up there for the arena, for the pools, arenas, hockey tournaments, it's a mess. I mean, yeah, you're walking half a mile, maybe even more, even for kids. We have a parking issue there, so I feel if you're gonna do anything by taking that middle softball diamond, everything is a parking spot. And second question is, who is going to maintain this dog park? Is it the staff?
Well, it is township property,
Right.
and staff usually looks after the cutting of the grass.
Like who's looking after the fencing and make sure everything's
Well-
okay, the gates? I mean, we have Sarah and Jocelyn.
Yes,
Okay, but let me just clarify
So-
that through the CAO. We have a dog park in Johnstown. Does that come under staff maintenance?
Through the chair, I believe that it's just the cutting of the grass.
Inside the fence?
Inside the fence area is the degree of maintenance,
Is what?
is the degree of maintenance that's.
Okay, all right. So that same.
All the fencing and that is responsibility of Sarah. We have a committee who does that. And it's quite a lot of work. He has a report, there's 3, 4 people on the committee, and they come back every month with a report that the fence is down or the gates are up, needs repair. So that's all I want to know. Who is gonna maintain this so we don't get Fluffy going across the railroad track and get hit because the gate's open. And then we get a lawsuit. That's all. And like I said, I'm all for dog parks. I just don't think that's the right place. I just don't think that's the right place for it. I think, we should look at something.
I think with the name like Fluffy, it should be.
Okay,
Yeah.
Council Hunter, you wanted it.
Well, I just think it's not gonna get done this year anyway, and I think that's a decision that needs to be left to the next council. What they're doing with it. My only real problem with it is the one Council Bilbao has. Since we built that brick, I didn't want that ballpark turned into a parking lot there because we need more parking. We knew that when we were building it, we were gonna need more parking there. But my other problem is you take the money out of the reserve fund height to use for a dog park, when we've got a multi-million-dollar water and sewer project that needs to be done in Cardinal, I think that $160,000. A lot better spent for the rest of the Cardinal going to help lower their costs for the water and sewer project that they gotta pay for it and put the dog park in for that, have an X number of people have dogs that they want. That's my opinion, I'm not here anyway, so that's okay. You guys,
Well, as all the speakers have noted, the gist of this motion is to ask for a staff report. And I think the staff has heard the comments about maintenance. I think they've heard the comments about location. And I've certainly just now heard the comment about the use of the funds. But those are issues for another day, in my opinion, after we've seen the staff report. So if we can regard those issues as issues to be resolved after we've seen the staff report, I'd like to just call the question on asking that the staff prepare a report. So with those few remarks, unless I hear comments to the contrary, I'm going to call the question on the main intent of the main motion, which is to just ask for a staff report. So those in favor?
I like a
I think Mr. Grant wanted in before.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Brown.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, it doesn't impact the main motion, I'm sure, but I've been corrected. The 160,221.45, we have to take off 43,500 that's dedicated to the pool filter.
To the which?
To the pool filter
I thought
replacement?
that was already taken out.
No, that's not.
Oh, yeah, no, it's earmarked.
It's earmarked.
That's correct. Yes.
So So
Yes, so
my-
that would-
My apologies.
Yeah, that would,
So
that
that
would still
reduces
be
it somewhat.
120,000.
Yeah.
It was at one-
However, I don't think this thing is gonna go, I don't know what the order of magnitude was in Johnstown, but I don't think it'll be this order, that order of magnitude anyway. Okay, so I'm on now to 7B. And
Oh, question.
You got it.
Yes, oh, I did.
But
I thought I did.
Councilor Dill asked for.
I asked for a recorded vote, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We're required by. Okay, I'm gonna call a recorded vote. Councilor Cameron, how do you vote?
Yay.
Councilor Bilbao, how do you vote?
Nay.
And Councilor Hunter, how do you vote?
Nay.
And Deputy Mayor Deschamps?
Yeah.
And I'll go with the yeas to hear what the report has to say. So motion is carried.
Thank you.
Right, now the next one is 7B. And that's coming forward from the tri-council meeting. And before I put that on, it isn't on the floor yet. There's a draft in front of everybody. And I'm going to explain why the draft is there. At the tri-council meeting, there were two concepts about how we would put forward the data that's collected as a result of our recreation and tourism asset inventory and the work that we're doing to build that database. And the two concepts were, we would, all three of us, go together and create a new website. The other concept was that once all that data is collected, it would be posted on each of our separate walls, websites with cross links, and we can post as much of Augusta's and Prescott's information on our site as we wanted to, but we could also include links to theirs. So there were two separate concepts. And I just wanted to have a resolution of that issue. And so the issue that's on the table is written in the positive. And it's, be it resolved that we endorse the creation of an entirely new website. And the reason I wanted it forwarded, formed like that is because I'm hoping that this motion will be defeated, and that will get that concept of an entirely new website off the table completely. Because I think there's a lot of danger in trying to create a new website where all three of us are identified as being part of the parcel of the same initiative. It's a bad time to be creating wrong impressions, if I can put it that way. So it's on the floor for discussion. If somebody feels that they want to move the motion, they're willing to do so. Personally, I will be voting against it, but I would like to see the issue clarified. It's not the kind of an issue that I think can be left in the hands of the CAO. That's not of the CAOs, the three CAOs. It's not fair to them because it's a political issue. It's not a staff issue.
So you, just so that I get this right, you brought forward a motion to council. You brought it
To
forward
committee,
to committee.
I drafted this
You
motion.
drafted it and brought it to committee, and you're hoping it fails.
Yes, absolutely. All motions should be written in the positive, and this one is written in the positive. And then when they're defeated, that is out of the way.
You say all motions should be written.
In the
Positive?
positive. Yeah, all motions should be written in a positive sense.
Right.
Clerk is nodding her head.
Yeah, I think I understand where you're going here, but I certainly, I personally, I wouldn't support the motion as it's written anyway. As much as the therefore be it resolved is positive. I'm not sure much else is. So, my thoughts on the tri-municipal meeting and where we're headed is that two townships and the town of Prescott are working together to promote our assets, our services the best we can, not as three separate silos, but but include, 3 separate silos, but including the creation of one silo that will advertise all of those services for the betterment of all of our residents and the use of those services. So to me, this seems very counterproductive to me. To those, I think we directed during this meeting back to staff and asked staff to bring something to the next tri-municipal meeting that we could support at that meeting in the terms of a report. And this would cut the legs out from that work. And I have no interest in doing that. I want to see where our tri-municipal meetings go. The spirit of collaborativeness is great. And I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of things we can get out of that.
Councilor Hunter.
Well, I don't know about the motion. Here one way or another on how it's written. I don't agree with creating a complete new website. First place, it's going to cost a lot of money to form a complete new website. Second place, everybody in the three municipalities are used to go into their website, click on recreation, and right now you get Prescott's recreation, you get Augusta's recreation, you get our recreation. I think it's a simple matter to include them all into one, click on recreation, and you get everybody's recreation. Same as events, you click on it. I think for Tri-County, that's what needs to be done, that we publicize everybody, but I think it's just going to be a complete mess trying to have one separate website that somebody tries to go to. Like everybody, if a tourist comes to the area and in Edgersburg Cardinal, what are you going to go to? You're going to go to Edgersburg Cardinal and you're going to call it up. How many years is it going to take to get a new name to get people that come into the area that's going to recognize, I'm going to go to this, try whatever, to find out what recreation or what events are going. We know how long we changed the port's name in 2011. How long has it taken? People still call it Port of Prescott, not Port of Johnstown. Boats still refer to it as Port of Prescott. I think we got a brand new website that we spent a lot of money on. That's handicap accessible and everything there. Other townships are working on theirs, and Prescott's working on theirs. Just add it, go together and add all our information on the websites we have.
Other speakers, Councilor Cameron.
Yes, and that's exactly the question that I brought up at the last Tri-County meeting. And I still think that having it on three websites, your own website, have everything on there is as Councilor Hunter pointed out, it's just so easy for people that are in the area to do.
Now I see somebody's got something up on the screen.
So through the chair, I just pulled up our website with the first button, recreation and leisure, which shows everyone in the council chambers, the different drop downs. We have dedicated ones for arena and skating, community events, facilities and rentals, programming for both senior and adult recreation, summer programs, et cetera, So we try to maintain a minimum of 3-click in order for people to get to the spot to make it easily accessible. I know other municipalities in the area, including Prescott and Augusta, are working towards that, and I'm sure we would be able to get there with some collaboration and efforts.
Now, does our website, under that heading of recreation and leisure, does it include a link to either Prescott or Augusta or to both?
Through the chair, and not at this point, we don't have any direction for that. We only dedicate it to our own website in our own township right now.
Okay, so, but we could easily create those
Through
links.
the chair, we could easily create something for reference on our main recreation and leisure landing page, or we can create a whole separate subheader here, a parent page, and incorporate it somewhere along those lines,
Yeah, okay.
as well as through the chair, if the CAOs and clerks and managers of recreation facilities collaborate, there are different modules available through different website providers to provide things that are all in one stop shop for identifying on maps and on drop downs, similar to our council and community calendars for where recreation facilities are, when they're open, what type of options are available, but that would require, if we were doing something like that with the 3 municipalities, for all of them to work together under a single platform. But if we were to incorporate something like that in ours, it would be available at a cost.
But we also have a booking engine where people can book our recreation facilities, right?
Through the chair, yes, we have something called Booking, and it, through the staff, and it works quite well, and it's very organized and fairly easy to manage, both on our end and for the public to manage.
Councillor Gillabon wanted in, then I'll go back to second speaks.
No, I didn't want in on that one.
Okay, so. back
So
to-
I'll come back in. First, Councillor Hunter mentioned cost. And, you know, he said expensive, he's already decided the budget. I don't know that it has to be that way. It depends on what staff brings back as a report. I mean, if somebody secures a domain name is not expensive. I mean, I'm sure you have one. To buy a domain name, it's not that expensive. And if all that domain name does is create a recreation and leisure page, and it puts Prescott banner, Augusta banner, and Edwardsburg Cardinal banner on it, that leads you to the Edwardsburg Cardinal website. It's not gonna be expensive at all. So, and if it gives folks that are searching for something as tourists, or some way to find and use a new facility or a pool or an aquatics program, name something, and gets them using our facilities because they live in Brockville, and they collect it, great. Good for them.
My point was, how many years it's gonna take to find that domain, unless you do
Well, let's wait.
spend money to
Again,
publicize it.
all we're waiting for is staff to come back with a report
That's
to see what exactly we have. They're the experts. Let's wait and see what they bring to us. And then we can make the decisions based on the information they bring to us, which is
I don't
exactly
know
our
about
job.
wait, I'm just saying, that's my opinion. I think it's, people knows where the websites are, and it's easy to link them together, but you don't need to create.
And to go back to my position, I don't think that this is a staff decision. I think that this is a political decision. And I think it gets us down the road to people worrying that maybe we're gonna be more than just. I mean, it's got the big A in front of it. That's what it has in front of it. And I don't think that this is an appropriate time for that. I don't think that there's any, I don't think there's any appetite for that. I don't want, my intent here was to try to avoid that confusion in the eyes of the public. Councillor Campbell.
Mr. Mayor, I meant to ask this question at the last meeting, not at the Tri-County meeting, but at the Tri-County meetings, there's an awful lot of inference that we're gonna give this to staff, give this to staff, give this to staff. I'd like to know from staff, do you really have all the extra time to do all this? If you don't mind.
Through the chair, I would say that staff's schedules are loaded, but obviously the council sets those priorities, and then it's my job to adjust and try to work through on those priorities.
And back on second.
Yeah, I can't, like you said the A word, and you're the one that said the A word in your motion that you didn't want supported. And you were afraid to say the A word again. I don't get, and I don't understand how promoting Edwardsburg Cardinal events in Prescott and Augusta and in the surrounding municipalities to draw in people that aren't aware of our assets and festivals and things promotes amalgamation. I'm sorry, I don't get it. I don't agree with it. We really need to work around. People put so much time and effort, like the Cardinal Festival Committee did, into the July 1st fireworks. Trying something like alternating dates with Prescott so we can get more people there to enjoy them and make those budgets spread out even further. I don't see how that leads us down the path to amalgamation. I don't. Sorry.
Well, I'm gonna respond to that because we're talking apples and oranges here, and you're talking apples and I'm talking oranges. And what I'm afraid of is that when you combine these into a single website, where all three municipalities are sponsors to that website, the first thing the website needs is a name. And if you use a name such as South Rendell, and I don't know how else you would come to a name, because if you use the name Recreation and Leisure, somebody driving down the 401 highway is not going to be punching in Recreation and Leisure. They're going to be saying, where am I? And they're going to be looking for where am I to find Recreation and Leisure. So you've got to at some point have a title. That title leads to amalgamation. I'm not afraid to say the word because I'm dead set against it. And I don't want anyone to think that I'm going down that road because I certainly am not. And I have no problem with working together with Prescott and Augusta to try to pull together a major database. And when we saw at our last meeting, the report that was prepared by our staff and submitted to the other two CAOs, Recreation and Leisure Activities or Tourism, whatever the title was, we had about 8 pages of data. We haven't seen yet how that 8 pages of data will amalgamate and compile into what has already been prepared. But it's going to be quite impressive. And it is going to be available for everybody to see, whether we post it on our own websites or whether we go down the road of a fourth standalone website, which, as Councillor Hunter has pointed out, is going to involve costs. Doesn't matter how you cut the cake. Somebody has to create the website, somebody has to name it, and somebody has to maintain it. Now, why are we getting into that? Now, I have no problem if this motion doesn't come on the table. I have no problem if it gets approved or if it doesn't get approved. It's irrelevant to me because it will be sorted out at the tri-municipal meeting. And it wasn't me that brought up the concept of a completely separate website. But that concept of a completely separate website has the word amalgamation written all over it. Or as Mayor Malanka prefers to call it, we're working in partnership. Okay, so I don't want to belabor this point. We got a long agenda in front of us. I suggest that we move on. I don't see any appetite to move the motion forward. Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to a slight point of clarification with respect to the asset development. That was actually all 3 CAOs developing those assets in combination.
Okay, but what we saw was just ours.
Correct, because I do believe that the assets in those areas with Prescott and Augusta were presented at an earlier date, and because we were newer to the table, CAO are strong focused on our assets.
Okay, so can I ask this question then? Are the CAOs then working to provide an amalgam of those so that all three asset bases come together?
We're certainly working towards a central location. Yes, like a central database.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I'm now then on item 7C, which is the second quarter building report, starting on page 14. And there's a report here a long report on page 15 of this list. So, do you have any questions with this report? I guess the one observation, go Councilor Dillwall.
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor, I see that that we're down in homes from the previous years. I just like to know how come. Is there a reason behind this? Does this CEO or the building people know why? Like, I mean, I thought we would be way up. I think we're down trying to get it here, front of me. We have first quarter, we have 19, we had 26B last year, we're 19 this year, is that right, Mr. CEO?
Through the chair, that's correct. We're down about 7 new residential construction builds. In speaking with the chief building official, some of it has to do with the supply chain issues with respect to material and some reluctance to proceed to get that building permit where the delays are occurring.
Okay, so duly chaired to the CEO again. So it's not that it's hard to get a building permit here as long as, you know, go through the proper channels, so on and so forth. Getting to that, how many, can someone help me?
Just a second,
Yes,
because the statement you made is that it's hard to get a building permit here?
no, I'm asking because now that he answered me, the CEO answered my question that we're having problems getting material. I just want to make sure that it wasn't because we're having issues getting permits because it was hard
In the department?
in our department. Yes, that's all.
So
He already clarified that it's more.
just a clarification, the township isn't having problems obtaining materials.
No, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, you answered my question. It's too bad because I mean, we really rely on our homes where we make our money at the permit fees. I mean, 90% of our revenue is from our residential homes. It's not from commercial or industrial. So it's very, very important that we really try to do our darndest. I mean, I understand we don't make materials and we can't get the materials to the people. And I know there's a couple houses that I know, that's exactly what happened. They can't get material. They want to build, but they can't. So that's all I was more concerned about. It's the permit fees we rely is residential. There's not too much in commercial or industrial or agriculture. So, thank you.
No. Councillor Hunter?
I think we're doing pretty good considering the atmosphere that we're in right here. I know material shortages is one thing, but labor shortage is another thing. There's houses I know that people are waiting to build and they can't get anybody to build it because there's just such a labor shortage. So I know a lot of our developers in the area are hooked up to the middle of 2023. And don't just build in our township, but all over. People want to build, they just can't get anybody to build the house. The labor shortage is so great. Material is one thing, but you gotta have somebody ready to build. My son's business, there's 2 multi-million-dollar barns that have been waiting for 2 years to get somebody to build them. They can't. People are tied up, there's just nobody to build them, so.
Other comments, Councillor Cameron?
Yes, just to sort of piggyback on Councillor Hunter's concerns, I also think too with the volatile real estate market too, the price of lots and whatnot is somewhat up and down, and you can't have a banner year every year. You're going to have your high years, you're going to have your low years, and you're going to have your middle years. So you know, I think we're doing as a township, we're doing pretty darn good. Only seven startups down to date, and that could pick up in the second and third quarter, somewhere along there. But I think there's also a dollar cent issue as well.
So, Mr. Grant, I'll just address my question to you. In your conversations with the chief building official, I know your answer that he does cite material shortages as one of the reasons that he feels that people are not proceeding to take out permits. Does he give any indication of what that unanswered demand is?
Through the chair, no, we certainly haven't gone into that, but detail and some of it would probably be speculative in nature.
Okay.
I think as far as readiness to process those applications and get things started, and that certainly hasn't changed from our perspective.
Okay, so I'm just going to make a comment here as myself. And so I think that we have to note that at this point of the year, which is the 30%, excuse me, the 50% point of the year, June the 30th, we're down in almost all categories. We're down in residential project value and residential permit fee value. We're down in commercial project value and commercial permit fees. Same for industrial, same for agricultural. So at this point of the year, it's not looking very optimistic. However, as Councillor Cameron indicates, things can change. But the big problem is that while things may change in the supply issue, I think Councillor Hunter has really put his finger on the nub of the problem. Our big problem is labor shortages and contractors and builders, in my opinion. And I guess the worrisome part for me is that this is the year in which we decided to add to the personnel in our building department, and by bringing on a building inspector to help the chief building official in his inspection duties. And that has come with no little increase in costs. And it does not look as though the permit fees generated are going to be sufficient to handle those increasing costs. However, we do have a reserve account to cover that shortage. And I guess at this point, it looks like we will have to draw from that reserve account, but that's what it's for. So I wanted to thank the chief building official for his report. And Mr. Grant, you can tell him that we understand, the council understands his comment about shortages of materials. And we're hoping that both shortage of materials and labor issues will resolve themselves. So if there's no other comments with the quarter building report, I'm going to move on to the second quarter bylaw report. And so that's 7D of the agenda, the second quarter bylaw report. And that starts on page, I'll find it here, 16. Page 16, yes, it is page 16 of 75, and goes on for several pages. Floor is open for discussion, comments, if any. Seeing no result. Okay, go ahead.
Just going to page 19, I think. Yeah, 19. Just for the parking violations. I struggle. I mean, I understand maybe, and I don't know what they actually were issued for, but when I look at the Spencerville ones, I can assume what they were for. Like, I'm struggling with the thought of that there's 8 parking violations in Cardinal or 14 in general over a month and a half. Like, having had I'm struggling to think that the parking violations are an issue in April and May in Cardinal, and in the township in general. But so I guess if I had a question, it would be through the mayor to the CAO. When there is a parking violation issue, is it reactive or is it proactive, or a combination maybe?
So through the chair, I would say it's a combination.
I'd like an explanation of the question.
So reactive meaning,
So,
reactive meaning that somebody phoned township to complain of a parking situation, proactive, meaning the bylaw officer was driving by and saw something he didn't like, and a combination.
So reactive is complaint based, where we received a complaint. Proactive would be,
And what was the answer?
it would be a combination.
Yeah, okay,
Well, you know,
that's fair.
Yeah, no,
Yeah. Do we tally that?
Is there any way of knowing?
So whether it's proactive or reactive, there is a violation. If the feeling is that it would be excluding winter parking, for instance, that it would move to a reactive, then you know, that is something that we could look at and discuss. But the reality is if you're parked in front of the fire hydrant, whether it's a complaint based or whether it's the bylaw officer driving by, we would anticipate that there would be a ticket issue.
Yeah.
So that's,
Okay,
there may be certain ones that are issued that cause a little bit more disturbance than others.
any further discussion? I don't know whether that answers your question. Want to follow up?
No, I think I'll leave it for somebody else if anybody else is.
Okay, any other speakers to this, questions of this report? Before I move on, go ahead.
I won't take too much time, Mr. Mayor, just maybe to the CEO or clerk is how many that are actually waiting to go to the limits of the provincial court? Is that 11? I see down below, and then there's 18 files, I guess, 30 states complaints. Three of the court appearances files were closed. So that meant that they, instead of going to court, they came to the conclusion to help resolve that problem. To the chair, to the CEO, or to the clerk.
So through the chair, that is correct. Those three cases, through the court appearance files, those three, either they went to first appearance and through that process of first appearance, they were told to get their items in order, or it will go to trial. In those three cases, those three property owners did gain compliance before it went to trial. Through that process, the court speaks with the township officer, the bylaw officer, myself, confirms that compliance has been met and satisfactory before the trial date is canceled.
So, through the chair, just one more. So, if you don't mind, so are we saying we have 11 waiting to go to trial? Is that
Through
right?
the chair,
In
that is correct on
the
various
court. Okay,
matters.
thank you so much. Thank you.
So have all those 11 had their first appearances then?
Through the chair, I'd have to double check. I do not believe so. Some of them are still waiting for appearance because we have things in the court system all the way back from 2018 that got delayed due to COVID. And then we filed some between 2020 to 2022 that are still in the waiting process.
We have the, it's a while since I've talked to the lady at county that is the interface with the provincial offenses court. Is the court opening up at all? Do we have any kind of a report on that? Are we getting trial dates?
Through the chair, we are getting first appearance and trial dates. They're very general in nature at this time. They are opening it up to in-person as well as virtual, depending on the circumstances. So we are hopeful for a couple of our, let's call them more difficult cases that are upcoming to be able to be in person. That way our lawyer as well as our bylaw officer and sometimes myself will be attending.
Okay, but we are getting both trial dates and first appearance dates.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions here before I move on? Okay, if there are no other questions before I move on, I'm gonna get myself lost here, so bear with me for a second.
Page 22.
Yeah, I'm on page 22.
23.
23, which is the second quarter Treasury and Reserve Fund report. And there are 4 reports here. The first is the financial report as of June the 30th, which is on page 24, basically giving us our balance sheet. Quick look at our balance sheet as of June the 30th. So are there any questions or comments with regard to this? I see no hands, so I'm going to move on and just point out before I do, well, we'll deal with that later. The next report that comes forward is the long-term debt schedule with balances as of June the 30th. And that then is the one on page 25, is it?
26.
That's capital.
That's actually the wrong one. Here it is here. Page 26. Long-term debt schedule. Are there any questions here? If there are no questions here, I just want to point out something to council. If you'll look at the Infrastructure Ontario loan for the Cardinal Arena, you will see that it reduced from 4,673,000 on March the 31st to 4,628,000 on June the 30th, indicating that one of our 2 annual payments was made. So we made a payment in the amount of 151,000, which reduced our principal by 44,000, but cost us $107,000 in interest. So when you look at the same information as it pertains to the Infrastructure Ontario loan that we have for the EMS station, again, we had a balance on, I'm going to go to the December balance, which was 641,000, and the March balance was 623,000. One payment in there of 26,000, which reduced our principal by 17,000 and our interest cost or 9,000. So in each case, see what happens is in the early stages of these debentures, the majority of the payment goes to interest, but as you get towards the end of the debenture, the principal payment, the amount applied to principal increases. So I'm going to go now then to the third report, which is the 2021 capital status report as of June the 30th. Now it says year-to-date 2021, but I'm thinking that it must be the 2022 capital projects. Is that correct, Mr. Grant?
That is correct. That is a typo.
Okay, so we have on page 25 then a list of all of those capital projects and where they stand as of June 30th. Are there any questions with this? And I think you can see that a lot of these are already underway in some way, shape, or form. A few of them maybe not yet started. But are there any questions with this report? Okay, so I see no questions coming there. So now I'll go to the fourth report, which is our reserve and reserve fund balances as of June the 30th. And we now have a up-to-date report showing our balances at December the 31st or the 1st of January, both dates being identical from the point of view of the balances, only one, midnight in between. And the December or the 1st of January 2022 balances include all of the adjustments that were made as a result of the year-end adjustments. And the treasurer's now got them all added in. And we can see that our reserve and reserve funds as of the end of December 2021 were $9,236,000. Now, we've committed to draw down a lot of those reserves during 2022. And that will be done. And we have good reserves and reserve fund balances to report both in this report and I think at the end of 2022. So are there any questions with this report? Hearing none, I'm about to move on. And so that takes me on to the next report, which is the second quarter budget variance report, which begins then on page 28. And the treasurer has given us a very good synopsis here of where our variances occur and points out that this report is as of June the 30th. So we would expect to see approximately 50% of the budget spent and 50% remaining. But as she points out in her briefing note, some variances occur because some expenditures are one-time and have already taken place, and others are not always on a 1/12 basis. So the report then is the next few pages, starting at page 30. Are there any questions with this report? If there are none, I just want to highlight, and I don't see any hands, I just want to highlight a couple of comments from the treasurer's report. Sorry about that, I apologize. Some of the variances of note in expenses are as follows. The public workshop expenses and fuel are currently higher than the 2021 year-to-date value, mainly due to the current price of fuel. We're seeing that on all of the reports that I'm getting these last few weeks, both at county and here. The fuel costs are driving all of our public works budgets right off the charts as far as our budget estimates were concerned. And then the treasurer also points out that our winter control expenses only have about 16% budget remaining for 2022. And depending on the weather that we get in the last few months of 2022, we may or may not have to draw from our winter control reserve. And again, we have a good balance in that winter control reserve of 158,000, actually 168,000 we have in that winter control reserve as of this point in time. So any further comments with regard to this report? Hearing none. Okay, hearing none, going on. The next one is item number 7G, which is the second quarter council remuneration report. And that starts on page 34 and the chart is on page 35. Are there any questions with this report? Hearing none, let me just highlight that all of council expense reports are well within our budgeted estimates, and it doesn't appear that we will exceed even through to the end of the year our budget estimates as we've approved them. Right now I'm moving then to item number 7H, which is our reserve fund investing options. And we have a very comprehensive reserve fund investing options briefing note in front of us on page 36 and 37, along with the recommendation on page 37. And let me first of all say, in introducing this, that I'm going to get this right because I don't want to get it misleading information. Let me go back to basics here. First of all, are there any questions from any member?
My
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
just one quick one, and this is committee. if we commit to the recommendation, this doesn't actually get or happen until after the council meeting. Am I correct? And
That's correct.
I think that
The
just because it's
recommendation is the committee recommends that council direct.
yeah, right. So, because it's widely anticipated that there's going to be a 0.75 minimum Bank of Canada increase on Wednesday. And I'm just wondering if, I know it says or better if available on the recommendation, but I'm just wondering to see what effect that would have over the next couple of weeks. So,
Depends on how fast the banks react to the central bank. But certainly this rate that the treasurer quotes, and she provides us with the backup documentation of 4.4%
that's good.
for a 1-year non-redeemable GIC is quite attractive when compared with prime less, I think it's prime less, prime less 1.85. Yes, it's much more attractive than prime less 1.85. So, so just to put things in perspective, the balance in our consolidated reserve fund as of the 1st of January of this year was 9.2 million. That's in the consolidated reserve fund. And I think the treasurer, right, yeah, should have it right. The treasurer is recommending that we direct 2.5 million of that into a 1-year non-redeemable GIC with Scotiabank at a rate of 4.4 or better, which of course will be realized if the banks react to the Canada as Canada resets its rates. All right.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I mean, it's a pretty good report from the treasurer. The treasurer's online. I'm just wondering if there's anything before we go down the road that she thinks that we should highlight out of her report or that we should see out of her report. So.
Certainly through the chair. The only thing I would correct Marion is that our reserves are in the consolidated reserve fund is only the bottom half of that reserve schedule. So it's only just over 5.8.
Yes, sorry.
Not
Thank you very much.
million. But part of my action item is that, even though we pull that amount of money out of our, consolidated reserve fund, our regular banking account has maintained a fairly good balance over the last year or two, between $3 and $6 million, depending on the time of the year that we have a balance. And in conjunction with a healthy bank balance, we're going to be utilizing our construction loan option with IO for our storm water management. So I don't see an impact to our working funds. We're going to be able to submit a claim for costs incurred and get paid back relatively quickly. So I'm pretty comfortable with, and we're still leaving over half of that money in our consolidated reserve fund to utilize if we really needed to.
4.4 is free. Oh, that's good. Thanks, Mr.
Okay, so good report. And so I have a recommendation in front of me. I have Deputy Mayor Deschamps moving the recommendation. Does he have a second?
It does.
Councillor Cameron seconding. If there's no further question, I'm going to call the question. Those in favor? Aye. Motion is carried. All right, and so now I'm moving to, what is it, 7I, the procedural bylaw. And the clerk is suggesting changes in 2 areas of the procedural bylaw. And I'm going to let her highlight those 2 changes. If you would, please.
Through the chair, so one is inevitable, we have to address it. The first one is in regards to the change in the municipal act, where the term used to begin on December 1st. Following changes to section 235, the term of office for persons now elected to council begins on November 15th. So you'll see at the very beginning, under council meetings, section 2, 3, 4, and 5, I have made suggested changes. The first being the change to the inaugural meeting date to be moved to the 3rd Monday in November, That will be the Monday following the November 15th this year, just to give staff as well as the elect members some additional time to organize everything. As well as I've incorporated some things that were never in our procedural bylaw that outlines just for an inaugural agenda. It's something very standard, but it should be included in a procedural bylaw just for future reference and future councils. So that way things aren't up in the air in question for especially a brand new council if they come in. As well as just section 4 and section 5 are just to cover the basis for all of council to make sure that they are aware, especially new council-elect, that these are requirements under the Municipal Act. I also just posed the question later on in section 107 and 108 to the council's direction for electronic participation in meetings. That comes to an expiry on July 31st, and staff are just looking for directions to how you want to move forward with that.
Okay, so there are two basic issues on the table here. The first, as the treasurer points out, are mandated basically because of changes in the act. And they're captured on page 44 and 45. So I think we can dispense with discussion there. And then where are your others? What were the sections you just quoted?
Through the chair, section 107 and 108, the very end.
Right, sections 107 and 108. The issue being our present procedural bylaw does recognize that we can participate in a Zoom meeting and vote at a Zoom meeting up until July the 31st. But that clause in our procedural bylaw will, that permits that will expire on July the 31st. And the issue that the staff is looking for direction on is, do we want to extend it? And if so, for how much? So the floor is open for discussion to provide direction to staff on that issue. Okay, Deputy Mayor.
On that issue, but I have a couple other questions too. On that issue, I've read through it pretty clearly. I think that it indicates that preference for people, for council members, is to be in attendance. Having done, I know lots of us have had to do Zoom meetings. I personally don't find the online meeting process as solid as I do when we're all in the room for good, healthy debate together. However, I do, on the other side of it, recognize the need for time to time for it to happen. So I'm not usually a fence sitter. I'm usually pretty solid on one side or the other. I think, again, it's covered in there that it's preferred that we're at the table, but in certain instances it recognizes that we're not. So I guess probably would speak in favor of, I guess, but
So, you're not indicating a preference.
no, I gotta leave it. I think I'm gonna fence it. I know that's unusual for me, but I'll go with whatever council goes with on this one.
Other speakers to the issue, Councillor Hunter and then Councillor Cameron and Councillor Dill.
We come through a couple of years here of where we made it to the table. Except 1 or 2 meetings that we actually did on Zoom. I didn't find them productive at all. I think the members of council, you run for council, you make a decision that you're going to attend council meetings, and I think you need to be at the table. Be on Zoom or whatever you want to come in. I know certain ones that did that for quite a while, the school board being one. There's been a couple of trustees that have used that to no end. Some on Zoom, so showing up for a week, so I see where some people might find it hard to get to the meeting sometimes, but Unfortunately, that's what we gotta work on, run for council, so.
Okay, so your druthers would be to just let the existing clause in our procedural bylaw expire, and we'd be finished with Zoom meetings at the end of July. Other speakers, Councillor Cameron, Councillor Dillaw.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do agree with Councillor Hunter that that's the way I'd like to see it go as well. However, I'd just like to point out, what about, do we have a clause in there in the case of an emergency where a councillor can, for some unknown reason, whatever it may be, a death in the family, a funeral, an emergency at a hospital, where he could tune in? I mean, most of us have devices now that we can Zoom to a meeting.
There's no provision in the procedural, I'll get the clerk to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm gonna be succinct here. As I understand it, right now, there is no provision in our procedural bylaw to allow a member of council to attend and vote. Is that correct?
Through the chair, under section 107 and 108, to attend, participate, and vote does provide that both in open and closed session.
Yeah.
But if we remove these clauses, they will not be able to do so.
And that's my point, Mr. Mayor. What I'm saying is, I do think we should have a clause in there that if an emergency exists where a councillor needs to attend the meeting by Zoom, he should and vote, closed and open sessions. That should be in there.
Okay, that's your position,
That is my position.
Councillor Dillaw.
No, I'm with Councillor Hunter on this one. We take it over to be at our meetings, and if there's some unknown reason, as Councillor Cameron says, a death in the family or whatever, you send your regrets. I'd like to let it expire July 31st, 2022.
All right, so we have two to let it expire, one to say, yes, we should, and one sitting on the fence.
I'm
and Mayor
actually,
never spoke.
I'll go, I'm reading it again. I'm hearing what both of the councilors are saying, but I mean, the key line in number 107 is in-person participation shall remain the primary method of participation. And I mean, I get, none of us want to abuse that situation, and not one person, we all made great attempts. I know, Mr. Mayor, during county's council, often you were there and very few other people were there. I know how important it is for you to be there, but those meetings wouldn't have happened without Zoom. So that's why I struggle, because I just don't want somebody to abuse, if there's a new council that comes in, somebody to abuse that ability. And I don't know what the control, the fear is, what would the control be, or how would you stop that abuse? And that's my only concern. Otherwise, I'm fully in support of it, but it's just the possibility of somebody abusing that.
Okay, so the control mechanism is the procedural bylaw, and the control device is the council table. Simple as that. And so a new council, I mean, depending on how we leave this procedural bylaw, a new council will inherit it as it is. It'll survive the election, and then a new council may change it or not change it or live with it. It's up to them. That's the mechanism. So the staff is looking for direction here.
Before we go though, I do have a couple other questions. And I know there's only a couple of changes, but I mean, I read through it. I mean, the whole thing is for discussion, right? Like, the entire bylaw is open for discussion. It's not just electronic participation.
So through the chair, for the purpose of this report, it was just the inaugural meeting section as well as the electronic participation. Usually we would do with the new council, a new whole review of the procedural bylaw, since it is close to the end. We did do a review back in 2019 with this current council to do a full review of procedural bylaw with any changes that they wanted to make. But if there's any
Yeah,
suggestions.
And our agenda indicates that there's only those two issues up for discussion.
Well, but we're approving the whole bylaw though.
No, the bylaw is already approved. The bylaw is already in force and effect. All we're talking about is changes to one section mandatory, another section potentially, depending on will of council. But the bylaw is already in full force and effect. 2019-15.
Yeah, I see that. Will it come through as a new bylaw or an amendment to that bylaw? Like, will it be new bylaw then? It'll be 22 dash whatever.
Through the chair, it really depends on how many amendments are being made. If it's just the intention for the changes to the inaugural meeting for those 3 new sections plus the amendment to section 2, then it'd be an amendment if the electronic participation stays. However, if that's to be removed as well, then most of the time, depending on the number of amendments and amending changes, I try to consider how confusing that will be for the public to review and read.
All right, I'm fine with what it is. I'll ask my questions through email. Look at it. So,
Okay, so Chair's looking for direction here. How do you read the situation at the present time? You're sitting there. I'm not going to say watching me squirt, but how do you read where we are right now?
Mr. Chair, I would read the table as putting some confines on that electronic participation if it's going to be extended. So, potentially to the, a November or an October an extension that it restricts it to this particular council term would be a potential, that there might be some comfort, but I would say that right now it's going to be 3-2, whether it extends at all or whether it just expires at the end of the month.
That's the way I read it
But I
too.
think you can sort of meet halfway in the middle by extending it for a few more months.
Councillor Hunter, you want back in?
Well, I don't really see the point. All sat at the table here for 4 years. We basically got about 4 council meetings left. How many of us we're worried about being away for 1 meeting and let the next council deal with?
I think
Okay, so
Just let it expire.
Well, you're going to, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. You're going to review this with the new council or the next council that comes in anyway. So why not just review it all, right? Keep the changes made to the inaugural, which are in red, and then just keep everything until the new council reviews it.
well, except that okay. So tell me the mechanism here. The bylaw that I have in front of me, where does the bylaw that I have in front of me show the July 31st deadline?
Through the chair, this is my consolidated version that I refer to.
Yes.
The 107 and 108 was amended, I want to say mid last year, and then again earlier this year to do the extension. So it's in a previous bylaw, and it states clearly that this is to expire on July 31st unless it is extended by council resolution.
Okay, but it doesn't show in as a clause in this bylaw.
No, through the chair, it does not. It's like I mentioned, this is just my consolidated version from the founding basis of the 1915 bylaw that I have incorporated all of the changes from my reference instead of referring to 4 or 5 bylaws at a time. I just compiled it all for this meeting, so that way it's easier for council to review all at once rather than flipping through half a dozen reports.
Yes, but the essence of it is this. What I have in front of me here is Schedule A to bylaw 2019-15. Now, is there another schedule that's subsequent to this schedule? Because if not, this bylaw stands on its own. And there is no reference to the July 31st date.
So through the chair, I can just pull it up. So bylaw 2021-23 amended bylaw 2019-15. And the last clause, clause 9, that this bylaw amending procedural bylaw 2019-15 with respect to electronic participation in meetings shall expire on July 31st unless extended by resolution.
Okay, so there is
There,
an amendment to this bylaw, which we don't have in front of us on this consolidated version. And that speaks for itself. And unless we take an overt action here tonight to recommend something to council, on July 31st, the whole thing becomes, the whole participation of Zoom meetings becomes a dead issue off the table. All right, that's so.
Question,
We
Mr. Mayor.
just let me see if I can see where we are.
sorry, through the chair, I quoted the last year's bylaw that did that. It's this year's bylaw 2022-03.
2022-03.
We did it in 2021 as well as the beginning of 2022. I just pulled up the wrong one with the exact same line.
All right, okay. So where are we here? With 2022-03, amending this bylaw, on July the 31st, participation in Zoom meetings is off the table. We have Councillor Hunter speaking to get it off the table. The deputy mayor
I'm
So-
in favor.
getting it off the table,
No, keeping it on.
keeping it on.
Yeah.
All right, we have Councillor Hunter or Councillor Cameron saying keep it on. And we have Councillor Dillabaugh saying
Keep it on.
keep it on.
Ah,
Off,
Keep it on.
I want the 31st.
Two.
That's it. No
you
more.
want it gone?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go with the two that say it's off the table as of July 31st. That makes the vote, if we voted, that would make the vote 3-2. Now, do I need to call a vote?
Mr. Mayor, could I ask?
One
a
last
question
chance.
first?
Okay, go ahead.
My question is to the clerk, and when this comes to council at the end of the month, if you do not get unanimous first reading, what happens to it?
No, there's,
Yes, sir. And through the chair.
That
that's
means
when
it
you-
goes
you-
for another month.
You will only have first and second reading with the procedural bylaw. You cannot do all three readings of the procedural bylaw
Okay,
at the same meeting.
Questions
so it's got to be stretched out for another month,
regardless.
regardless. Yeah.
That's the way it is.
okay, but the bylaw that's gonna come forward is gonna incorporate the changes required by the municipal act, right?
Through the chair, that is correct.
So
Right.
basically, that's all we'll be voting on at the council meeting on the end of this month,
Through the chair,
first and
that's
second
correct.
readings.
First and second.
That is correct unless I receive direction otherwise.
So, yeah, so when you see the bylaw at the end of the month, 107 and 108 will not be.
Won't be on it, but the other changes will be. Until you vote.
Through the chair, at the end of the month, depending on how tonight goes.
It's gone.
The amending bylaw for 2022-03 is in effect until July 31st, unless it expires. However, if I receive direction this evening, then I have to incorporate in the amending bylaw for the inaugural to either keep it or we just let it expire for the electronic participation.
You realize, of course, that all of this discussion really leads to when we amend a bylaw, we create a new one. The old one goes away, the new one becomes in full force and effect, and we don't deal with one-offs. All right, so
Which is one of my questions.
go ahead, ask your question. Well,
No, I had a whole bunch of them just when I read through it. That's all. I had like 5 that I thought were actually that were important. One's like where we post our information to. The only thing that it says we're supposed to through our procedure bylaw is to post it on our website. We're not required to post it anywhere else. I just struggle with that.
Well, just a minute now. So what is the gist of the question? Let's see if we can deal with it. All bylaws are posted on our website, are they not? We have a bylaw section.
through the
So-
chair.
Yeah, so if we go to item 102,
Item what?
item 102, number 102 in the bylaw.
Okay, that's clause 102.
The notice will only be provided on the township website.
Notice of meetings will be provided to the public via the municipal website. That's what the bylaw says.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's your issue?
That it's only, that the bylaw actually do it via Recorder and Times. We do it, I believe, still by the Beacon. I don't know if we do it via social media. But we're making pretty good assumptions that everybody's just going to our website. I mean, if it is procedure that we're doing, shouldn't it be in the bylaw that we advertise via print media, via social media?
Well, the bylaw sets a minimum standard and the clerk goes beyond the minimum standard. That's quite common. A lot of, I mean, even at county council, that things are done that way. They set the minimum standard and you can go beyond the minimum standard, but this is the minimum standard. If we want to change the minimum standard to include, other websites or print media, they have to, then this 102, this clause 102 has to be amended, but right now that is the minimum standard. So
Well, the
just a minute now.
clerk's got her hand up.
Okay, so just one second, I got too many hands up. So you first.
So through the chair, we've kept consistent with section 102 for being the minimum standard of posting to our website. Because there are certain occasions where we call special meetings at the last moment or within a day or two time, and it's impossible for us to get it to the local newspapers. So the only mechanism to get it out at this point is through our websites. And if there is something up and coming, we do try to get it to our social media, but I've had meetings called within hours. So sometimes it's not always readily available in time wise. So that's why we've set our minimum standard to be the municipal website. Yes, we posted on our municipal website. We posted on our council calendar through our website, which people can subscribe to. So every time I make changes to that council calendar, people see those changes if they're subscribed to those changes on our website and on our social media. As well as I do circulate it on a weekly basis to our Recorder and Times associates that go to two other local weekly flyers for Prescott and Brockville. At this time, we don't do the South Grenville Beacon because they are only every other week. So it doesn't stay consistent with our meeting schedules.
Yeah, they're not really a recognized media outlet. Councillor Cameron, now your issue that you're raising is directly related to the issue related over here?
Yes, I think so. So if we have a minimum standard, let's say, and we are going outside of the minimum, what is written in black and white, then why can't it come to, if someone is away on an emergency, why can't an exception be made in that case?
Because you're raising the standard.
Well,
Through the chair, the municipal act states otherwise, that we have to have provisions in our procedural
Okay.
bylaw to allow for electronic
Okay.
participation, no matter what the circumstance.
okay. I'll say, thank you.
Okay, now you had another question, or do you want to follow up to this one?
No, I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable with the minimum, with the idea of it being a minimum, and we can go beyond that. I mean, at some point, I think we have to recognize
Okay, now,
social media, but I'm fine with not doing that. It's just questions and reading through it, and I know that we're only making 2 changes to it, but if we're, like you said, if we're creating an entirely new bylaw, shouldn't we fix the things that or question the things that we have issues with? And I certainly found a few spots where I had questions.
okay, go ahead.
Through the chair, we can put that on for a future discussion.
Like, I don't mind emailing them in and getting a staff answer as to why it's that way. I don't mind that at all, and I'll bring them up or ask through notice of motion if I don't like the answer. That's fine, I don't mind.
Counselor Hunter.
I'm fine with that. Anybody ask questions, but as far as producing a new procedural bylaw at this point in the council's term, I think it's totally out of place. Every new council comes in, the first thing we do is review the procedural bylaw. So I think this is just, honestly, I know Deputy Mayor's concerns, but I think this is a waste of time now, 4 months away from an election. That's something we dealt with whoever is on. So elected to council for the next term in November to deal with. That should is always generally the first priority.
I guess,
Council is the procedural bylaw,
Yeah.
how you're gonna work.
yes.
It's not efficient and effective use of staff time because it's gonna be duplicated again. Okay, so what are you bringing forward then to council? Because do I have any place in front of me a recommendation
Cut off almost.
You,
Cut off.
on page 41,
on page 41? Thank you very much. Get back to page 41 and see what the recommendation is here. So the recommendation is that committee recommends that council adopt the updated procedural bylaw as attached. Now, remember then, all we would be doing is making the changes that are in red if this recommendation passes.
You have to remove almost that.
And remove 107 and 108.
That is not part of the recommendation.
You're correct.
So through the chair, I could only sorry. I can only write the recommendation that I did in red highlights, because as you can see on the first page of my report, I was asking for direction as to whether or not we keep it, we extend it, or remove it. Right now, I have the majority of council directing me to remove it. So the 31st will be expired, and the 2022-03 that provides for the extension will have it leave, basically.
Okay,
And the
so,
amending bylaw will.
all right, but this recommendation is not yet on the floor. And so it can be added to or words taken away from it before it comes on the floor. So if the will of council is that we want sections 102, 107 and 108 removed, we would say committee recommends that council adopt the updated procedural bylaw as attached with clause 107 and 108 removed. With clause 107 and 108 removed. So that's the majority consensus at the table right now. Is there a mover to move that recommendation? I'll move. Okay, I have Councillor Dillabaugh moving. Does he have a seconder?
So this is taking the July 31st out,
Yes.
rather than keeping it in.
No, we're removing 107 and 108.
So through the chair, if the will of the table tonight is to have 107 and 108 removed, it will be removed entirely. Either way, right now, our 2022-03 bylaw states if there is no council resolution to extend it, it will expire.
So really, all we need is what the recommendation is right here. We don't need anything added to it.
Okay, so those words will come out then. Council, well,
Through the chair, for a level of comfort, you can keep that in the.
that's what I was
recommendation.
thinking, yeah.
Keep it in,
Yeah, it
because
gives
that-
it makes it
attached,
a
I
level
mean,
of
it's-
clarity.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so in the interest of clarity, with clause 107 and 108 removed.
Thank you for that.
Now, Councillor
Small
Dillabaugh is
Councillor
still,
Cameron.
Councillor Dillabaugh is still looking for a seconder.
He's got a second. We're all in favor.
Councillor Hunter, you're seconding?
We'll just get rid of it next year.
All right,
Teamwork makes the.
here's the recommendation as it's coming forward by the mover and the seconder. The committee recommends that council adopt the updated procedural bylaw as attached with clauses 107 and 108 removed. That's the motion that's on the floor. Are those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so that motion is carried, and I'm gonna even mark it unanimous.
Wow.
Not that it means anything. All right,
So far.
so far, right? All right, now that gets us through the procedural bylaw, and I'm at item number 7J, which is the borrowing bylaw. And I need the page, there it is there, page 56. And again, we have a briefing note with a recommendation. So again, the recommendation is rather clear, recommending that council direct staff to draft a borrowing bylaw for a construction loan from the Ontario Infrastructure Loan L Corporation to fund the 2022 storm water management projects. So I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for this recommendation. I have Councillor Hunter moving. Does he have a second?
Who does?
Come on.
He has a seconder. I'm going to take Councillor Cameron. And are there any discussion on this recommendation? Hearing none, I'm going to call the question. Those in favor? Motion is carried. All right, now I'm at corporate control activities, which begins on page 58 of 75 and goes on for a number of pages. Now, as I see the report in front of me, I have no recommendations. All we are doing is receiving the report. So if there are no questions with the report, I'm going to move past this relatively quickly.
I have a question
Okay, go ahead.
and a comment. First, I'll make my comment quickly. Just want to commend Mr. Courtney again this year on the fantastic work that he does in controlling, the cormorants. I wish our neighbors to the south, to the west, and to the east took up such a respectful way through a trapper to control some of the birds. My question is, why are the numbers of birds redacted?
Okay, and I'll answer that question because I asked to have them redacted. And the reason I asked to have them redacted is because the purpose of our bylaw is to protect our property. And in many cases, Mr. Courtney will harass 30 birds in a tree. And you can see that in a number of places, he refers to how many he's harassing. But I don't want that confused with how many he's shooting, because he only shoots a very limited number of birds. And I didn't want the public to be confused and think that we're slaughtering thousands of birds. That's not what's happening here. We're harassing birds and trying to get them to move on. And it's been a very successful program from the point of view of getting them to move on without actually dispatching them. So that's why it's redacted.
But it redacts the shot as well as the harassed. I mean, and I agree with you wholeheartedly that Mr. Courtney does a fantastic job, and I redacted or not, I'll stand behind the great work that he does. I think he does a great job. I think we should show members that.
Well, the report goes to the staff. The staff has that number. And it also goes to a number of other places. I can't remember where else does he send this report? Oh, to Ontario Power Generation, right? So they see the numbers as well.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, so if there are no other questions, I'm moving on. And that gets me to item number 7L, which is the Greenfield Global Water Agreement. And we have a recommendation in front of us here. Now, this is something that we agreed to some time ago, and it's being adjusted slightly because of more accurate cost estimates. And the work has now been rescheduled, I think, for August. So the recommendation is the committee recommend the council approve and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the updated amendment to the design, build, finance, operate, and maintain agreement with Greenfield Global Inc. So are there any questions with regard to this, Deputy Mayor?
Just one, Mr. Mayor, and I'm sure it's quick, through you to the CAO on page 69 of 75. The agreement's been changed for the exceeding the estimated capital costs, where Greenfield logo's been reduced by 14%, I guess, and we've been increased by 14%. What's the reasoning behind that change?
Through the chair, if there's any overages with respect to that estimated cost sharing, that we would just do a 50-50 split, as some of the going to full capacity has created some additional complexities, and it would be a fair split in those ends of it.
Does that answer your question or follow-up?
I'm fine.
Right, now we still end up with we've increased the capacity now to the full capacity of the intake pipe, right?
Through the chair, based on the theoretical capacity of that pipe, yes. So in the end, Greenfield Global would have 4,400 cubic meters a day of capacity, and the township would have 3,500.
And that's at the north side of County Road 2, because the pumps are designed to take the full capacity of the pipe to the north side of County Road 2, right?
That is correct. To that splitter box, we'll call it.
Right. So and I believe as we've configured this and engineered this, the pumps that are going to be installed are the maximum size to get the maximum value out of the volume of the intake pipe.
That is correct.
Okay, and we still maintain our percentage water.
Correct. We would have 3,500 cubic meters a day.
Okay, so are there any other questions with regard to this agreement? If not, I'm looking for a mover and a second to action the recommendation. Councillor Hunter moving. Does he have a second?
Yes.
Councillor Cameron seconded. Are there any other comments or questions? If not, I'm about to call the question. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. So through that. Now then, I'm at item number 7M, which is the request for new street lights in the township on Charlotte Street. So we have a briefing note starting on page 72. And I think it goes 72, 73, 74, and 75. Now, the staff has been asked to present us with this briefing note. And the recommendation that we have in front of us is that council remains status quo in regard to the lighting on Charlotte Street, which in 2022, and direct staff to further plan and budget to install lights in 2023. Now, I'm a little bit disappointed in the recommendation because I was hoping that we would get at least one a light up on Charlotte Street sometime this year, in view of the fact that we've had several delegations speaking to the issue. And I have visited that area of Charlotte Street several times in the last 3 or 4 months. So I'm kind of looking for a way, and I kind of warned Mr. Grant, so I don't want the staff to feel that we've ambushed them or near in any way. But I'm kind of looking for a way to modify this recommendation so that we can get at least one light up this year. So I don't have a mover and a seconder yet, but I am going to suggest a change to the recommendation that comes forward so that it would read as follows. The committee recommends that council erect one long arm streetlight on existing pole CA 67 at a cost not to exceed $3,000. Now, the briefing note indicates that new poles may be required to to install lights correctly, but I'm hoping that pole CA 67 would take an existing, would take a light as it exists. And remembering, of course, that the concept here is not so much traffic control as it is a question of safety in a rather dark area where there are 6 or 7 households. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was also by there several times, including this afternoon. And to be quite truthful, I would like to see two streetlights put in. One at the sort of the YCA 42 with the pole opposite, which would be on the east side of Charlotte Street, and also one at 67 where you and make a recommendation. I'll be more than happy to settle for 1, 2 would be nice.
Well, there's no motion on the table. You can word it however you like. If you're gonna move it. Well, I see I got some other speakers here.
Let's hear the other speakers.
Councillor Dillabar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I've been up there at night. It's the 42 though. We have, if you go up there at night, it's pretty well lit up from our immigration. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I looked at pole 57 now. I'm not sure if I got the right pole. I'm wondering maybe our operation manager may be able to help me. I called pole 57. There's a brand new pole, and then there's one that's off with they put a brand new pole and left the little one there with it for Bell Canada. Is that pole 57 to be chaired to our operation manager? No,
Through the chair, I know, I can see where you're talking about, but right off the top of my head, I can't recall exactly. The poles on the
west side.
All on the west side.
Yeah, it's on the west side, brand new hydro pole.
Okay, so
And then there's a little one they left here beside it.
yeah, they may, I'm speculating, so I can't say for sure, but sometimes when they put a new pole in, they leave the bell connected to the
Yeah,
smaller
and
pole
they
and
did.
then they transfer it.
Yeah, well, they didn't transfer it, they left. it.
No, but
Yeah.
with the intent that it would be transferred when Bell gets to it in the future. I'm not sure how the wires are configured on that, but typically on the west side, a lot of the poles that are in front of residents have the wires leading to the house, which may cause some difficulty in mounting, like if the pole's not tall enough.
This one doesn't. So that's where I would prefer the pole, if it's 57. You'll see it when you see the brand new pole and the pole they left there. That to me would like that whole street right up to, well, that house there where pole 61. I mean, 67, you kind of defeat your purpose. There's only one house there. You know, 1 or 2. The last one is at the end there. So I think myself halfway through there, 57 would be great. Take everything up down to lead to that one house. That's my opinion. But we have to get at least one up there, and I'll make a motion to do that
Okay, well,
if you want.
okay, so right now, there's no motion on the floor.
Right.
And so if a motion is gonna come forward to put up one, it has to kind of provide direction as to where we're looking. And if you're looking at CA 57,
Yes, I got it
that
circled.
could go in the motion.
Okay.
And if you're looking for 2, you could put in CA 57 and CA 67. And if they were going on existing poles, you should be able to put them up for about 3,000 each, they're telling us, because the briefing note is telling us 1,500 to 2,000 with 3-meter arms, and I don't know, they don't give us the indication of what the longer arms cost, but if we add another $500 for the longer arm, that would take it up to possibly 2,500, and that's why I used 3,000. And then the new pole is what drives the cost. And that's why I'm suggesting that the motion that come forward say on existing poles.
There's-
I don't know that, I mean, it's up to Hydro to either approve or disapprove the application. It's their, they won't give you a firm answer until you say this is what we're going to do, or this is what we want to do. So I'm still looking for a motion to come forward. What's your direction?
Before he does that,
Okay.
if I could
Deputy
just
Mayor.
ask, might be the director of ops, if maybe the treasurer or even the CAO. So we're looking at new dollars, or are we basically delaying? Like, we have $7,000 left budget. I'm assuming we haven't spent that on lights yet. So we would have a plan to spend that 7,000 this year. So are we, if we install these and use that money, are we then not installing somewhere else? Or are we approving new money in addition to the budgeted allotment of 7,000? That's my question. To whomever it needs to go to.
To the CAO, and then you can redirect.
Yeah, so through the chair, there is 7,000 within the 2022 budget. It's not.
So the other part of that question was, has it been allotted towards specific street light installations yet?
Not at this time.
Councilor Hunter, do you have your hand up here?
No, I comment before, our policy.
Do as many as you can for 7th grade.
Okay, so I still don't have a motion on the floor.
I will make a motion, Mr. Mayor, that we will install one light on, I'm hoping I get, that's the only thing though, because I don't know the pole, if it's exactly the pole 57. I mean, I get to see, but there's two poles, a brand new hydro pole that's put in, the high one, and they left the little one there that's attached. And I would like that street light on that one. So I'm gonna say pole 57, up to $3,000.
Okay, so I'm gonna,
And I like to say just one light until 2023.
okay, so I'm going to just rework the motion slightly. The committee recommends that council erect one long arm street light on existing pole CA 57, and I'll leave a question mark behind that in case you haven't got it exactly right, at a cost not to exceed 3,000, and in 2022, and at a cost not to exceed $3,000 on Charlotte Street in 2022, and direct staff to further plan and budget to install lights in 2023. So do you have a seconder for that
On
one?
Charlotte Street.
I'll second.
You're the second,
I'm fine.
Deputy Mayor seconding. All right, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to call the question. Those in favor? Aye. Motion is carried. Okay, let's see that one. Now I'm at. That's it. Now I'm at item 8, which is council inquiries or notices of motion. Does anyone have any notices of motion to bring forward? Councilor Dillaw.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been getting several calls in New Wexford again for speeding problems. I don't know what to do. I went to the OPP myself again. That's the second time, third time maybe. I have no answers to give to these people.
Well, generally, we just come to council or directly to staff, and we ask that the traffic calming devices be installed in that area for a period of time.
And we've had done that in the past, which I appreciate the staff doing it. We get all the reports, we give it to the OPP, and away we go. And then 6 months down the road, we're right back to where we started. So that's all I'm saying on that.
I'm assuming this is on Highway 2,
Yes, it is.
and is it east-westbound or westbound?
Both. But it's seems to be going eastbound more.
That's what I was thinking.
Yes. So,
I know there's a problem there, Council.
and there's a real problem because there's no shoulder there. I mean, it's a combination. We just don't have the shoulder.
Okay, I'm just gonna say to the CAO, suggestions, if any?
Through the chair, I think it would be worthwhile for us to review the previous data that we've obtained. I'm not necessarily sure installing the radar signs again will result in anything substantially different. I suspect that there's probably a 10 to 15% of the vehicles that are driving there are driving at a higher rate, and probably a 5 to 7% that are driving at an extremely high rate. But I would anticipate that the results that we've found in the past is that the majority of that 85th percentile are driving within a reasonable speed. So I'm not necessarily sure that any additional productive results could be received by putting that up, other than potentially slowing a few down for a couple weeks, but you're probably not going to slow down the main offenders.
Well, the point is that for the period of time that it's up, people do see that they're over speeding and they do slow.
Through the chair, I would say for the first couple times that they're through, and then I don't want to wrap myself out, but I have the flashing red light every time I go into Prescott. I'm over 40 kilometers. I could be at 44 or 45. And then unfortunately, I just can't get down to 40 kilometers an hour. I could just even though I know that it's there, I'm saying that's just the typical human behavior. The first few times it's a surprise and they slow down, but then it actually just turns into a routine.
Well, there's two factors come in there. I'm not gonna go into them. But anyway, okay, so you put your concern on the table. Do you have others?
I do. Just one more. I'd like to know if we could remove our COVID-19 signs there with sleep cardinal, so any other signs around. Please.
Thank you.
Put them over here.
Thanks for remembering that. I was gonna bring that up.
Into the renegade. That's that. This time. Thank you. That's it.
Is there any other notices of motion?
It's already been answered. Thank you.
Okay. So if there's nothing else, then I'm gonna move on again. And it looks like the next item is the mayor's report. I just have a couple of things here. Just points of interest more than anything. So I did receive a call earlier this month from the president of the Ontario Trumpeters Swans Association, reminding me or telling me or informing me that we have a colony of trumpeter swans in the swamp on Glenmail Road. And for some reason or another, the swans go back and forth across Glen Smail Road, and asking if there was anything that we could do about it. And then this person who's domiciled in Guelph has actually come to the swamp to see the situation. And she's put me in touch with this lady named Eve, who is a resident of our township and goes there regularly. So I just want to say that I asked Mr. Grant and the manager of roads to meet me there this morning, and the lady showed us. And so we'll see what we can do to protect the swans. They seem to feel that the swans are highly endangered, but Councillor Hunter points out to me that a lot of the locals realize that the swans are there, and they govern themselves accordingly as they come down the road. And he indicates to me that in all the time that he's been here, he has never heard of one of the younger ones being killed. So I think that's an encouraging sign. The next thing that I wanted to talk about just briefly And I noticed this, and I'm just bringing it up, Mr. Grant, I haven't had time to discuss it with you, but I noticed this in one of our council packages. It concerns the Blue Box Transition Program, and there's a deadline coming forward on July the 15th, which I think is a new deadline. And it says the operational planning for the collection and processing system for Blue Box materials is well underway. The organization representing the majority of producers, Circular Materials, is asking that municipalities inform them of their interest or non-interest in providing curbside collection services for the Blue Box program during the transition period by July the 15th, 2022. Now, I think in an earlier meeting, we had indicated that we were in favor of at least offering our services as a collection agency. But were you aware that this new company, Circular Materials, had now received the appointment as the organization representing the majority of producers?
Through the chair, staff was aware, and there was a survey put forward, and we have completed that survey in advance of the July 15th to indicate that we are interested.
Okay, thanks very much. Appreciate that. For attention of council, the Rideau St. Lawrence Annual General Meeting will be held August the 19th in Westport. Information. And then Councillor Cameron approached me before the meeting, and you have a couple of things you wanted me to include, but I'll let you speak for yourself.
Oh, yes, thank you, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you're aware, I'm the liaison from council on the library board, and I just like to point out a couple of things that have been in contact with Clayton Jones at Cruise Rail, and he is once again going to supply the Casco engine to stop next to the library again sometime, date to be fixed yet, in August for the children of all ages, and that ranges anywhere from 3 or 4 to 90. And it was there 2 years ago, huge success. And Clayton did mention that the look on the children's faces is inspiring him to do this again. So I would just like to pass that on. And also Mr. Mallon, who does some astrology work at his house and with cameras and things like that, has agreed to meet with the library CAO and myself, and he has a plan to give some lessons or some kind of a program to the children at the Cardinal Library, and possibly expanding to the Spencerville Library as time allows. So those two things are a positive note, and I just wanted to bring it forward, Mr. Mayor, for council to digest.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Hunter.
Just one thing, not an inquiry, just something I believe that the township should maybe make note on our website here that we've had a young lad that grew up in this township, Caleb Lawrence, was drafted in the NHL draft this time. We also had a person, White from Prescott, who was drafted as well. I think it's worth noting that young people made the draft in the NHL. So
What was the first lad's name?
Caleb Lawrence.
Caleb?
Caleb, it's Andy Lawrence's great grandson.
Doug's grandson,
Andy
right?
Lawrence's
Stephen's son,
great-grandson.
Doug's grandson, yeah.
Grandson.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else? Any questions? Okay, so now that's the mayor's report concluded, and now I'm at item number 10, the question period. Are there any questions here with anything that was on tonight's agenda? Hearing none, seeing none.
I'd like to say that I appreciate all the work that everyone's done, trying to get my lights up Charlotte Street. I know it's a hard task to get that passed by council and staff, but I'm really appreciative that I'm at least gonna get one, well, maybe one light this year, and hopefully we'll proceed from there and get some more in the upcoming years.
Is there a question, like, how many next year?
Well, that was coming, yeah. And when there is a question, when there's a new council coming in, do I have to go through this procedure again all the time?
Well, let me put it this way, any initiatives that this council has started, some survived the election and others don't.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, now I'm at item number 11 on the agenda, which is the closed session, and we do have a closed session this afternoon, this evening, and it is 9:05. So we'll just take a very short break because our curfew is 10 o'clock. So short break, 5 minutes, and we'll be back. And now, do I need the motion to go into the closed session? Who has the motion to go into the closed session?
Move myself, second by Deputy Mayor Dishat, that the committee proceed in closed session 9:05 PM in order to address a matter pertaining to section 339(2). Personnel matters about identified individuals, including municipal or local board employees, specifically personal policy, grid, public works, building bylaw, Johnstown Motel, and minutes of closed session dated May 9th, 2022, section 239(2)(e), liquidation or potential liquidation, including matter litigation, including matters for administration tribunals affecting the municipality or local boards, specifically insurance company.
Okay, thank you very much. Those in favor? Motion is carried. 5-minute break.
Third meeting is now adjourned. The meeting committee is now resumed at 10:28 PM.
Those in favor? Motion is carried. So just reporting out from the closed session. To start with, Deputy Mayor Deschamps will bring forward a motion concerning the closed session of May the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor John Hunter, the committee receives and approves the closed session minutes dated May 9th, 2022.
Thank you very much. And further report out from the closed session. The committee met with Mr. Grant and to discuss matters related to a personnel policy grid and to receive verbal reports concerning public works, building department, bylaw department, and the Johnstown Motel, and to review the BFL 10-year claims experience, and provided no direction to staff other than to arrange a meeting with legal counsel for next Monday afternoon. And that's the report out from the closed session. Chair's looking for the motion to adjourn.
I have that motion, Mr. Mayor, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor John Hunter. The committee does now adjourn at 10:29 PM.
Thank you very much. Those in favor? Motion is carried.